All right, everyone, it's 3:04 p.m. and I will call to order the Clayton Budget and Audit Committee. Councilmember Tillman, are you present?
I am present.
And Councilmember Juan, are you present?
Yeah, what's up?
All right, thank you very much.
All right.
Oh, and I guess I should announce the action item. First, we're going to take any public comment. If anyone from the public wishes to speak, please hit *9.
Or the hand raise function. This would be on non-agenda items. There will be time for comment on the agenda item when we get to that item.
And I have 2 attendees with no hands raised, so we'll go ahead and close that. The next item is an action item. This is a workshop for fiscal year 2021-22 draft budget, and I will turn this over to our finance director, Paul Rodriguez.
Actually, I'm going to sneak in as city manager in advance of our finance director and provide some overview comments before we start the PowerPoint more specifically. So our purpose here this afternoon is to go over the proposed budget, focusing primarily on the operating budget in the general fund. By far the majority of our expenses and by far the biggest fund that we have. We'll find that, you know, the proposed budget is balanced with a very, very slim margin. But in looking at the longer term picture, we can see that there are some storm clouds on the horizon with respect to the condition of the general fund. The plan is to get through this and adopt the budget for fiscal year 22. We have this budget committee hearing. We have a public hearing on June 15th at the city council meeting, and then adoption on June 29th. This summer, into fall, we will be coming back with the longer term financial picture. That will include both a discussion about the American Rescue Plan funds that will be coming to the city, as well as looking at the now evident structural imbalance in our general fund, meaning our expenses are greater than our revenues and our expenses are growing more quickly than our revenues. And so that is not a sustainable long-term picture. We will also come back and talk about reserves at the same time, because that gives us both an ability to work through this period of time where we may be upside down with expenses greater than revenues, and also to have a conversation about what the city's reserve policy could look like, and we'll be asking the council to adopt a reserve policy with respect to our fund balance, so that we have some definition around those components of fund balance that we want to use. So that's our purpose today through the 29th, as well as through then summer into fall on the longer term picture. There are a couple of corrections that I want to call out before we get started. One, I did send a couple of updated spreadsheets for some of our smaller funds that were provided by finance. Those don't have an impact on the general fund, but are just continued refinements as we work through making sure that we have the best possible information for the proposed budget. Additionally, in the report that's in front of you, this question has come up, and it's all correct in the subsequent spreadsheets, but in the text, it identifies that a couple of the smaller funds, the landscape maintenance district budget and the Grove Park budget, are projected to have an annual CPI increase of 3.8%. That is capped in both measures at 3%, and it is calculated correctly in the budget. The budget spreadsheets are correct. The report is just misstating that the 3.8% was applied. There is a distinction to be made. So the assessment amount is capped at 3%, CPI or 3%, whichever is less. And that has an impact on the revenues that are generated. In addition to that, there is a recovery from each of those smaller funds for the general fund, which covers all of our sort of overhead administrative costs for managing those funds. And it is fairly typical. That historically has been increased by CPI. So last year you saw it was like a 1.1%, but in years prior it was 4% or 3.2%, et cetera. It is not capped at the 3%. And we have typically just provided that at the CPI level. So the report misstates that the underlying revenues for those two funds were increased by 3.8%. They were not, they were increased by 3%. So those who are paying those assessments should rest assured that the underlying components have been calculated correctly with the cap that's in the ballot measures. So with that, I think that covers all of the longer term kind of framing for this. Our plan this afternoon then is to go through a relatively brief PowerPoint presentation similar to what council and committees have seen in the past, talk about some of the highlights, the trends, et cetera. And then really we are at the disposal of the committee to talk about any of the underlying components or anything else in the packet that you may have questions on. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and I am going to see, do you all see one slide or two slides? One slide, perfect, I got it right. So I'm going to play virtual assistant while Paul, as our finance director, goes through the presentation. So please let us know if you have questions. But with that, I'm going to go to, going to go through to the next slide and turn it over to Paul. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rena. And as the city manager mentioned, this PowerPoint's a pretty brief 30,000 foot view, which primarily focuses on the general fund operating revenues and expenditures, with the idea that if anyone has questions within certain departments of the general fund or any other fund for that matter, that we can do a deep dive into those after this presentation. So to start out with, the fiscal year proposed 21-22 budget has the audited numbers in from 19-20, which is the year that was just closed. Of course, we'll be closing fiscal year June 30, 2021 this summer. So again, 19-20 closed, the general fund closed with a net increase of $404,000. And if you'll recall, during mid-year, we took an adjusted amount that was which ended up being $290,542. It's less than the $404,000 because there's a non-cash item that has to do with the fair recording our assets at fair market value. So we reduced it by that amount, and council action was to transfer this $290,000 into the new rainy day fund that was created with last year's budget. And of course, the council can now can provide direction at any time to assign these funds for one-time or other purposes. Next slide, please. For fiscal 2021, the current year, as I said, that we're in, and again, just as an aside, I always think it's, and maybe Jeff will or won't appreciate this, this is my favorite time of the year because we're kind of time traveling as accountants. We're looking at the year that was, the year that we're in, and the year that's going to be. So it's one of those times where we're really looking at 3 years at once. So we just looked at the year that ended in 1920. We're projecting for the year that's going to close at the end of this month to have an operational surplus of about $150,000. However, again, this year hasn't been audited nor has it been closed, and it will be brought back to the city council when the books are closed, and at that time, the city council can provide direction as to what they would like to do with those funds at that time. Next slide, please. Next slide. So as you can see, these are the major revenues over the last 10 years. Property taxes in lieu of VLF that's our number one revenue source, and it is increasing, as are secured property taxes. Franchise fees seem to be plateauing, which does make sense in the sense, I would just bring up two items. Number one, probably our garbage property tax, or excuse me, our garbage franchise taxes probably nudged down a little bit because of the pandemic and having fewer businesses open. I don't know that Clayton would be as severely impacted as other cities, but that seems to be one issue. And then the other one, of course, would be folks that are cord cutting and moving away from cable and onto utilizing streaming services for their television and internet needs. So then, of course, cable franchise fees would be another reason why our franchise fees are plateauing and in some cases decreasing a little bit. On the other hand, our sales tax are going up a little bit. Actually, we talked about this last year, but there are a couple items at play here. Number one, Clayton was a rare city that our sales taxes don't seem to have been impacted by the pandemic at all. In fact, some studies have shown that people have ordered online more, and so those sales tax dollars are captured by Clayton when that is done. And the other item is the Wayfair decision that was, gosh, 2 years ago now, to where the city gets a bigger share of online sales. And so hopefully those will continue to rise. Next slide, please. And please, if you have any questions at any time, let me know and I'll certainly stop. Our revenues by category, going from, I'd say 12 o'clock, we're at about 5.8% for miscellaneous revenues. Heading towards about from 1 to 2 o'clock there, 21.9% of our general fund revenues are property taxes in lieu of VLF. 20.4% are other property taxes. 11.1% are franchise fees. 11.3% are sales and use taxes. And again, those sales and use taxes have overtaken this current year franchise fees. 9% are the RPTTF share of property taxes. 3.4% are use of money in property. 5.2% are successor agency and fiduciary fund administrative revenues that come over from those funds to the general fund. Those are revenues that the general fund gets for managing those funds. 3.4% other in lieu of fees. 2.9% are business licenses. 3.2% are user benefit and regulatory fees, and 2.4% are the fees that we charge other funds for general fund admin costs. Next slide, please. And here is the projected revenues for 21-22. You see the total is about $5,185,000, and these are just the projected revenues broken up by category. Give you a second to peruse those. Okay, next slide. Now, this is the 8.25% sales tax rate. In April, the rate changed in the county, so this has the we left it at 8.25% because it's for most of this year that we're currently in, but we're going to be at 8.5%. 8.75%, excuse me. It was the county raised another half cent. So, but the allocation, it hasn't changed yet. But again, that'll change. Next slide, please. And then the ad valorem property tax, the city's 1%. This is where your dollars go. This is how where your 1% goes. And as you'll see, I'm looking at Mount Diablo Unified School District gets 36.8%. City of Clayton, as you'll see, is looking at getting my colors correct.
Looks like the 6.6.
Yeah, and it's broken out. I just didn't right in front of me. But yeah, the 6.6 belongs to Clayton. Next slide, please.
Can you hold on? Can we go? I just want to look at that one for a second. Thanks.
think really too that one of the things to really remember, and that's challenging for us is, folks, yourselves included, who live in the community feel that they pay a lot of property taxes, and they do, but most of it goes to other purposes other than local government operations, other than their city government. And so it's challenging for us, and particularly we'll talk about that this summer and fall, about, well, what does it mean in terms of what the city gets from the property tax versus our expenses, even though there are a significant amount of, other pieces that people are paying in property taxes and certainly feel in their budgets. Unfortunately, it doesn't all come to us. And I think sometimes there's this feeling that it all comes to us, and it doesn't by any stretch.
Is this placed in, I should probably know this, but is this anywhere on the city website?
In the CAFR.
Say again?
It's in the CAFR. It's
I know,
published
I'm
every
just
year.
saying, instead of somebody having to dig for it, is it prominently displayed so that residents know where their money's going?
So it's the budget's on the website, and it's part of the budget document.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think we could certainly do maybe a small section on our financial page that's sort of a basic budget 101 that has some of this information that folks could access, that would be a bit easier to digest than getting into an entire budget document or an entire CAFR. It can be a large document. That could be something that I think would be very valuable in terms of trying to explain how we're funded. What does it mean to be funded? And so certainly I think that's something that we'll look at doing.
Okay, great. That'd be great. Okay, thank you.
Anything on this slide, Jeff?
Nope, it's the same as before.
Good. And
so these are going into our expenditures for 21 or 21, 22, and then the preceding 5 years, as you can see.
oops, sorry.
Wow. Overall, our total expenditures rose by about $1 million, but if you'll see, that's primarily due to an increase in the proposed capital improvement program for the upcoming year. But as you do see, our operating expenditures in the general fund have risen pretty steadily, as well as other funds have done the same. The only one that seems to kind of bounce around a little bit are the capital improvement program, just based upon what projects are proposed for the upcoming year. The successor agency expenditures are going down. We had one payment. Our obligations are lowering, and in theory, as we wind up our redevelopment agency through the successor agency, our expenditures should go down to zero as we wind that down, because our obligations will be gone away. The only thing that we can pay, or that we get paid for as a successor agency, are what are called recognized obligations, and those are decreasing each year. Next, anybody have any questions on
What's behind the FY21 capital improvement program decline? Like, it seems like it hovers in a range, and that one is significantly lower. What did we not do that year?
We have pushed the neighborhood paving project into FY22 for a variety of reasons, and so that's a very significant project, and so it pushes out a significant expense in FY21, and it doesn't, it's a big chunk of what's in FY22, and there's not a lot of other money, which is why FY22 isn't like $4 million.
Yeah, you would expect a spike in 22 unless there was a corresponding decrease in other areas.
That's correct. There's a corresponding decrease in many other areas. But the million or so that is the neighborhood paving project is what the decline in 21 is, because we thought we were going to be able to do it in 21, and we ended up, we'll be bringing it for the the contracts for award either the very end of this month or the beginning of next month. So that's why it shifts. But the rest of FY22, there's very little funding.
And I think as well, Jeff, so fiscal 2021 was my first budget, and I think it was a little bit more philosophy shift. I think if you look at 19, 20, 18, 19, and 17, 18, that budget was loaded up. Those projects were loaded up, whether or not they thought they'd get them done in that fiscal year or not. And I said, well, no, I only want to budget what you believe is going to be expended in fiscal 2021. So instead of putting every project in for that year, in other words, I wasn't going to put a project in, a $500,000 project in fiscal 2021 if I knew that we weren't going to spend any money that year. And I think in the prior years, the budgets were loaded up with all of the projects, regardless of whether that or not they thought those funds would be expended that year. So that makes sense.
Okay, so you'd expect a lower expenditure amount outside of the street repaving to be closer to our regular run rate?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions on this page? Next, please. So here's our operating budgets. As you'll see, there's overall our expenditures went up about 7%, operating expenditures. And there were some reallocations. I did reallocate the way our legal fees were spread throughout departments based upon how they were actually spent over the last couple of years. But you'll see engineering has a pretty big increase, but that's we have in the proposed budget midway through the year of adding a full-time city engineer into the as an employee. So then of course our costs would rise due to that, just due to additional benefit costs. Police costs, you'll see, are projected to go up about 6%. This is a negotiating year within the police department, so there is a wage increase factored into the negotiations. Have not yet been completed, but we do have an escalator in there just as a placeholder. You'll see a library costs have gone down. We eliminated the Sunday hours because, as you'll recall, the amount for Sunday hours was a pretty steep increase as proposed by the county, and so we took that out. And if there's any other questions any of you might have on any of these, and again, we can do a deep dive, within the document itself after this presentation. Okay, seeing none, next slide, please. So then again, here's our in a chart or a pie chart form, as you'll see, and it's pretty typical throughout most cities that in California that with the general fund budget, police, and we don't have a fire department, so public safety gets the lion's share of the expenditures, and as I said, that's pretty common. But going from right to left, 1.2% is of our operating expenditures are in the legislative department, 3.3% in engineering, 2.5% for the library, 3.7% for public works, 4.9% for general services, 5.9% for the park, and 6.6% for community development, and then 20.3% for admin, finance, and legal, which would be the city managers and finance departments, essentially. Any questions on there? Okay, great. So again, and this is the pie chart in numerical present form, and so the proposed appropriations again, the total proposed operating expenditures are $5,182,822. Any questions on any of these? All righty, next slide, please. So this is our reserves to appropriations comparison. So you'll see our our budgeted appropriations are continuing to rise. The good news is, gosh, we've got over a year of reserves, although we foresee them taking a little bit of a downward turn this next year. And this is for the general fund. Any questions on this slide? All righty.
I do actually, just really quickly. So this is what Clayton's have been historically, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is 10 years. So you'll see like Councilmember Tillman and the
You
fiscal
could
year
just
ending,
Holly. It's fine.
June 30th, 2013, it looks like our operating expenditures were, our total, not just operating expenditures, but total budgeted appropriations in the general fund were about $3.6 million. And our fund balance, or our reserves at that time, were just a skosh under $5 million. Now it looks 10 years later that our operating reserves are just a bit over $5.5 million. However, our operating expenditures continue to rise, and a year or two out, unless we can do something with revenues or decrease expenditures somehow, those lines are going to cross.
Right.
Well, even if they cross, I mean,
Yeah.
that doesn't really mean anything, because
Right.
that's
It's more
only
important
informative.
than the
Yeah,
expenditures.
it's only informative as a portion of your reserves is just an arbitrary measure that we use, right? I mean, really, what we should have here is operating expense versus revenues.
Yep. So.
And so just really.
Yeah, there's a chart in your packet that I'm not a chart, a table in your packet that has that. I'm sorry, Councilmember Tom.
No, I was just going to ask, what do other cities usually try to have on hand as a reserve in general?
Well, it depends. One of the things that really attracted me to Clayton was the fact that you guys we had reserves here, because at the city of Eureka, I started there in the middle of a recession, and we had no reserves, and we'd always have to throw a line item in the budget called expected savings, because we knew that our expenditures would, over history had told us that our budgeted expenditures, our actuals actually would come in about 8% under what we were budgeting. So we knew there were budgeted savings, and since we had nothing in the way of reserves, and but most cities would like to have at least 60 days of operating expenditures, at least at a minimum 60 days of operating expenditures. We've got a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're in super good shape. And I've worked with Raina on developing a policy for the reserves. And again, she said that she was going to, we'll bring that forward probably sometime this summer. And I think it's a good policy. So I'll let Raina speak to that more if she'd like. So.
Okay.
And if I can just add on this chart, Councilmember Juan, I think you brought up a good point. This does not show revenues to expenses, but the one thing to maybe look at on the reserves is over this time period from 2013 to 2022, you basically have very close to about the same amount, 5 million, but you got to remember that there's inflation that's eaten away at the value of that dollar over time. And that's something when you look at a reserve policies, how to adjust for inflationary impacts to whatever money you decide to set aside. And that's why some cities have a percentage of budget and different methodologies that the city manager will go over with you guys at the later point. But the one thing to look at is in 2013, we had 5 million. We're a little over 5 million now, but that's probably just enough that's adjusted for maybe inflation in that one period of time. So the total dollar value is probably stagnant in terms of what it buys today as to what it would buy in 2013.
So as Paul mentioned, I will be bringing back, me and somebody will be bringing back a reserve policy as part of that long-term financial planning work this summer into the fall. And Paul's given us a great policy that we'll bring forward. And it typically would rely on something like a percentage of operating expenses for different types of reserves, a catastrophic reserve, a budget stabilization reserve, et cetera, using the percentage of operating expenses allows and encourages the entity to ensure that the reserves keep up with the kinds of increases in expenses. So we're in great shape. I mean, this is one of the things to take away from this slide is we're in great shape. We do not have a cash problem. We do not have any immediate problems. We are not going to, go belly up in the process. But you can look at this as well as the table in the packet that talks about how our revenues and expenses are growing in at different rates. And that's where our real concern is. This will be something that plays into it, but the other is really the concern.
Can I play devil's advocate for just a second and ask a question? It's not really even devil's advocate because I'm supposed to ask this. So if we have over $5 million in reserves and some cities or a few cities or whatever usually like to have at least 60 days and we've got a year, is there a reason why we don't use more of this for our budget?
Well, go ahead. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll let Raina, but I'd say you don't want to use and we're kind of doing it in this manner. We've taken a portion of the reserves and reallocated those to the rainy day fund for use but you don't really want to take what would be operating expenses are ongoing. So every year, every month, every year. And so you can only spend your reserve dollars one time. And if you're not replenishing those dollars, then, I think reserves are more appropriate. So in times of a calamity or fiscal emergency, or, you have a real shortfall, and then you allocate some of the reserves for that. But you typically, if you use reserves over a period of time for ongoing expenses, they'll get eaten up, especially when they're kind of trending downward anyway, and our expenditures are trending upward.
And
I would say
Councilmember
60 days. I would say 60 days is not a baseline. 60 days is just one data point.
Right.
That would be pretty crappy.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And the policy that I have brought forward has a more than that, and it also has like I want to say calamity. The word's eluding me, but we've got a catastrophic reserve. There's other, reserves other than.
And to Councilmember Tillman, to your question, maybe an easy way to articulate this to constituents is that the red line is basically our checking account for our ongoing operational cost, and the green line represents the savings account. So if you dip into it, it doesn't get really replenished. It's a one-time.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the two different lines there that are represented. And of course, and as you said, catastrophic, and Clayton has had to use its general fund in the past, the tune of $3+ million, when we had to do repairs to Marsh Creek Road by the middle school when the rainy season, something called rain fell and the hill fell down. It was part of FEMA reimbursement funds, but the way FEMA works is you have to wait. You pay for it up front, then you submit for your reimbursements, and then they give you a dime back on the dollar that you spent. So it's a very long process. And so you want to have money available in your savings account, as Mr. Rodriguez said, is for those catastrophic things. And so maybe, what would be looked at by the council is, having a couple of different fund components. One would be more of an operational contingency, another one for catastrophic. And that would be discussions that would be brought back to you in the future that the city manager alluded to as to your options.
I would say, as a matter of policy, the adopted city policy mandates that we carry a minimum of $250,000 in reserve. It represents something like 0.05% or something like that. So pretty inadequate, I would say. We exceed that every year.
We did a deep dive into that last year, Jeff, and I know it says that in the budget message and it says it in the CAPR. We can't find anywhere where that was actually ever formally adopted. The 250 emergency reserve.
It probably was, and it was, the records weren't maintained, and as our auditors probably have not verified it, so those work papers are probably in the wind.
somewhat non-important for kind of how we go forward. We clearly, 250,000 and or 60 days, not enough. 5 million, probably not the level, or, you know, over 100%, probably too much if from an ongoing standpoint. But we need to define where we want to be in the middle of that and what those purposes are. And just to kind of wrap up the last piece of this, really, Councilmember Tillman, to your question, you know, if we can establish a reserve policy and define what the reserves are that we want, we may find likely that there is some additional funding that is undesignated or can stay undesignated or could be used. But we would, as Paul said, typically recommend that that gets used for one-time purposes and not for ongoing, right? So that's where the future conversation comes. And, you know, we do have some cushion from that perspective, but you don't want to use it for ongoing expenses in a continuing fashion because eventually it runs out.
No, I asked the question because prior to me being on the council and having a friend that I had asked a question because I didn't understand how come different things weren't being funded. And then I was told that I should figure out where I can find it in the budget. So for other people who might be listening and wondering how come we don't do that, I wanted them to be able to hear the answer, which is why I asked the question. So
Did we answer your question to your satisfaction?
Oh, yes, yes, thanks.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So as you'll see, I mean, we've really happy. We've increased our surplus fivefold. Because last year it was $425. This year it's our operational surplus is about $2,600. So you'll see our proposed or our projected ending fund balance without any, you know, and I'm sure there will be some changes as we go through the budget with the full council. But for now, the proposed budget has a ending fund balance at June 30th, 2022. $5,617,735, and we are happy to present a balanced budget with just a very slight operational surplus. Next slide. So then this is we kind of brought this up. Well, we brought this up last year. We've got 3 special revenue funds that are projected to have shortfalls, either 21, 22, or shortly thereafter. I mean, these are funded by special parcel levies on your property tax bill. Any modifications to these assessments would require Prop 218 process to be enacted or something similar. And these are the GHAD, Fund 212, the Geological Hazard Abatement District, Fund 214, the Neighborhood Streetlight Assessment District, and the Stormwater Assessment District, Funds 216. If you'll go to the next slide. As you'll see, at the end of this current year, or excuse me, at the end of 2021-22, we've got a projected ending fund balance in the Geological Hazard and Abatement District. And the only reason that it has a 0 balance and it isn't into a negative is because we are proposing to transfer some funds from the Presley Settlement Jihad Fund, and you'll see our expenditures are a lot higher than what we're projecting, and they're actually about $30,000 higher than our budget from 2021. That's because we're proposing some projects within the district that need to be done, and let Raina talk about those projects if there's any questions.
Can you elaborate first on the Presley settlement? Because that was one of the changes that was indicated on the thing that you sent about 10 minutes before the meeting, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. So that, and I'll give an overview and then I'll let Laura do any historical stuff. But as part of setting up the GAD, there was a settlement that resulted in a balance of funds. As we identified in the budget last year, and again this year, it is anticipated over time that the expenses in this district will exceed the revenues that are generated from the annual assessment, and that those, the Presley settlement fund balance will likely be needed to help balance the budget.
Wait, so that doesn't talk about the actual Presley settlement.
Laura, can you
Sure.
provide some
thank you.
historical information?
Yes, Councilmember Juan, many years ago, before Presley left the development world, but the city and some homeowners had some litigation with Presley, mostly in the Peacock Creek area, and it related to some of the other development area up on Keller Ridge. But there was a bunch of litigation about what was or what wasn't done, how drainage was done, what wasn't done. But in the end, there was a settlement. The city received some funds. It was restricted to be only used for the jihad district because it was related to jihad issues. And so there's a pot of money that was set aside. And I believe, Paul, is it Fund 213 or 213? I believe it is.
213.
213 in the budget. And we touched upon that last year and said that the funds in that may need to be drawn upon to fund the jihad. And that's been information that we've had in the budget for about the last 5 years. So it was a legal settlement, monies that are restricted to be only used in the jihad district. It could be used for operations, a special study if you wanted to go in and do some monitoring. It's up to the council's discretion, and the funds are available to be used. But again, it is a limited pot of funds. I think there's a couple $100,000 in there.
It says 115 at the projected end of 2022.
Right.
Okay.
So
I didn't have the number in front of me.
in the budget from last year, on pages 33 and 34, there is a description. The settlement was from a case in 2003. The city and the district settled a lawsuit against Presley regarding damage to city infrastructure in the Keelock Way area of the Oakhurst development. After reimbursement, the funds were set aside to be used for GAD purposes. So some were appropriated in 2010 for some road resurfacing, and in 27-18 for removal and replacement of broken concrete V ditches. And then this year, the proposed transfer of about 20,000 is largely needed for a project on Awani Lane. I can't remember which is the, but basically a repair project. So that was the settlement was from 2003. There have been a couple of major uses of that settlement, but it's also been identified that over time, as extraordinary expenses, project expenses come up in the GAD, and the annual assessment is not sufficient, then we look to the Presley settlement fund to help plug that gap rather than the general fund to plug that gap. But that's the background, and it, like I said, it's explained last year in the pages 33 and 34 of the budget, which also give you that information. So if you want to refer back to it at some point.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
So next slide, please. The next fund that I wanted to highlight and as a special revenue fund is the Neighborhood Streetlight Assessment District, and our revenues are this. I don't think we can increase those. Is that correct, Laura? We can't increase. This is one that we cannot increase, even by a factor of the CPI. Is that correct?
That is correct. This is a capped rate that the public established over 20 years ago. So we're at our cap at $29 per equivalent runoff unit rate. It has not changed for, oh my gosh, at least 15, maybe 20 years.
So our fund balance over that time is getting eaten up because although our revenues are staying the same, other than maybe a little bit more interest in revenues, the expenditures continue to rise.
And I'll say that this is something that is facing pretty much all of the jurisdictions in this area. So all of, in San Pablo, my former city, we were spending substantially more than the stormwater assessment was bringing in, simply because the requirements were such that we needed to do so. It's very, very typical picture for jurisdictions in the county, and a real challenge for all of us coming up with, probably more requirements with the next regional permit.
So just because, like, when we talk about other special funds, we put risers, CPI risers on them. This does not have a CPI riser. None of these do, essentially. So is that because when it was drafted and approved, it wasn't included, or was it not allowed to be included at all?
I'd have to go back on that. That's a very good question, Councilmember Juan, because this was done so long ago. We had special legislation by then Senator Dan Boatwright that allowed Contra Costa County to put this type of a revenue measure in front of the property owners. And it was done on equivalent runoff unit rate, and it had a minimum floor and a capped top rate for each jurisdiction in Contra Costa County. And each city did their own, had an engineer that prepared that floor and that ceiling, but it was before Prop 218 came along.
Yeah, because it seems like there's an exercise to fix these.
Yeah.
Like, all of these should be fixed to have CPI risers on them.
And to do that, you have to go back and ask the voters, or actually on this one, ask the property owners to increase it. We've tried a new tax, because if to touch this one, if it fails, you lose all of the money.
Oh,
You
we
have
have
to
no money.
actually
We have no
ask
money anyway, so that doesn't seem
Well,
to be
you
a
get
problem.
$126,000 in revenue, but if you were to ask for a CPI increase on this and it fails, you lose all of your revenue. It's an all or nothing thing.
How big is the district? Well, this is stormwater. The other one is streetlights. Is that all streetlights, or is that a subset of streetlights?
It's a subset.
Neighborhood streetlights.
It does not include Oakhurst Boulevard. It does not include Clayton Road. It does not include Marsh Creek Road. Those are the corridor street lights that are paid for under your gas tax.
Okay, so it's like the collector street lights?
The collector and the neighborhood street lights, yes. Atchison Stage, or, the other streets that are public streets, yeah. But this is a citywide, this stormwater one is citywide for all properties, commercial and residential.
So what happens if we do nothing? Do all the streetlights have to turn off?
Well, this is stormwater for the street lights.
Sorry, this is stormwater. I'm thinking, well, in terms of streetlights, would they have to turn off?
You would have a choice of subsidizing it out of your general fund to pay the bills, or you could have the lights turned off. Street lighting is not a requirement in state law.
What about stormwater? If we don't do anything with stormwater,
we have
what's the consequence?
$10,000 a day minimum fine, jail, all sorts of things that the State Water Board has, because it comes under the Clean Water Act, so it's endangered species, public health issues, and they are going forward now with a new 5-year permit term to add in new permit requirements, including homelessness issues, more cleaning of creeks, looking more at litter issues that can contaminate waterways. So we're seeing what the new regulations will bring. They have not yet unveiled them in full in their draft form for public comment, and that will happen shortly with hearings later this fall and winter.
Okay, thanks.
So that is actually the last slide that we have with the formal presentation to kind of give you that overview. We obviously are all here, including staff, our city engineer, our maintenance staff, et cetera, for specific questions, and would be happy to, we could certainly go through department by department, but I'd be happy to have us answer questions to really tailor this to the interest of the committee.
I have a couple of questions, and some of them are tied together. One second. So let me digging through each of these. Can somebody explain to me the animal and pest control line items for each department? I'm more curious why the police department has the large bulk of it. So it makes sense to me to have the wild pigs up there taken care of at the community park. So there was a line item for that on there. Wasn't that much. I think for the park it was $9,000. And then you had the landscape maintenance district had about $5,000 for them, but then it looked like it was over 70,000 for the police department. And I just wasn't sure.
I think that's the animal control cost. So pest is like, localized pests, if you will. The city, just like the other cities in the county, contract with the county for animal control services. So anytime there's a vicious or dangerous animal, a dead animal, et cetera, all of that is paid on a per capita basis to the county for those services. So the county says it's going to be $690 something per capita. You owe us X dollars, pay us $112, and go forward. That's captured as a PD cost. It doesn't need to be captured that way, but it's a completely different function than what you see as sort of typical pest control or other animal functions. It's really the citywide animal control function.
Okay, and it's something that we're paying to the county for them to give us services every year.
Yes.
Okay, and then what other one? I figured out what the weed abatement piece was. There was page 32. I can tell you which piece it's under. It is under the landscape maintenance district piece again. The 222,000. It does say in here at the very bottom that Laura had an emergency and would be out and it'd be updated later.
That came to you right before the meeting.
Oh, is that in the one of the ones that was updated?
What was the nature of the update?
The broad nature of the update is that Laura was unfortunately on personal leave the week that we were finishing the budget. So Paul and I did the best we could. Jim did the best we could to plunk in a landscape district. So I'm not sure, Laura, what you updated, but that is.
Yeah, I don't have the details right in front of me. I have to grab them. But in general, for the projects, which is 7520, which is the area that Councilmember Tillman's talking about, we're looking at just replacing irrigation controllers and not doing any landscaping work. And the reason we're not going to be doing any landscaping work, I think we had a project in there for the Clayton Road median at 112 was in the budget. We haven't done it this year, and we're not planning to do it because we have an extreme drought condition right now facing us, and adding new plants and irrigation into the district is probably not advisable from Contra Costa Water District's perspective because we may be later into mandatory rationing or next year. So we'd like to hold off on new plantings because they do require a substantial amount of water to get established. And so we're going to focus more on trail maintenance and working on tree trimming and maintenance of trimming areas along trails and vegetation management, with trimming as the major focus for this next year, as well as replacing irrigation controllers, which will allow us to better monitor and control the irrigation in the systems that we have out there now. And I think Mr. Warburton's proposing we have about 6 left, probably due citywide after the ones he's ordered for this year come in. So that should get us in pretty good shape with our irrigation management system. And we just got new irrigation computer and upgraded software so that we have better control over the watering schedules on the plants.
Can you see the revised sheet? I realize it's pale, but I tried to share my screen. This is what was sent to you from this fund, and you can see the 222 and then the revised spread of the funds that are proposed across the different functions. So
yeah, is this an appropriate time to talk about, or at least to ask about, whether the frequency of water main breaks or water line breaks is expected? It seems like that happens all the time. When we look at the maintenance reports, yeah, we're always breaking water pipes. Can we do something rather than Band-Aid it?
Yeah, Councilmember One, we're not breaking them. The natural ground.
Well, I mean, the earth is breaking them.
Yes, yes. Most of them, and I've asked Jim Warburton's on the line here, but I think a lot of the ones you see in the Council Weekly are related to the Clayton Community Park, which is not part of this budget. That's in a separate department, and that's related to that area of the community park was a big canyon. All of that.
No, yeah, I understand. The earth is moving in this area, which causes a lot of the line breaks. So is our plan to just continue, or are we going to do something to prevent future breaks, like larger pipes that or housing around pipes, or something more durable? Because it seems like we spend time and money.
I'll let Mr.
On
Warburton answer that
something.
because I know they've looked at everything under the sun and there isn't a product out there that does anything, but Mr. Warburton, take it away.
Jeff, or Councilmember Juan, excuse me.
All right.
There's part of the problem is our system is very old.
Can we just, like, how much would it take to make it not break all the time?
There's no guarantee it won't
There's
break.
no
We
way
put
for
in
me
new
to
pipes
answer
and new
the
pipes
question.
break.
I'd love to give you an answer, you know, but unless you tear it all up and put in all brand new pipe.
Yeah,
which,
how much would that be to do that?
we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, just to do the park alone, there's 60 plus valves there. So you're gonna be tearing it all up and redoing the whole system. You're talking just to replace
I will-
filters was 60.
We have replaced those lines about 10 years ago and they still break.
Yeah, it's
We replaced a lot of the lines and they still break.
a part of
The
the
ground is
problem
settling
is
so
that
much and so
ground does
fast.
move. The ground does move, and we've tried different things, and we've slowed the amount of breaks down that we're having. We started using a steel compression coupling where before we were using a plastic one, or it's called a slip fix, and it slides in and out. So we started using a steel compression coupling, and that has slowed the brakes down a lot. We recently found that we had a gate valve that was open that was allowing two sources of water to enter the same system. And by shutting that gate valve off, we lessened the amount of pressure that was in the park. And so now the bottom of the park and the top of the park are two different systems. And we've greatly reduced the amount of irrigation breaks that we have there now. In fact, we're working on one now that's actually not a irrigation main. It's actually the water supply to the restrooms. So, by trial and error, we're trying to find out why these things are happening and what we can do to stop them. And so far, through the last 2-3 months, I think we've had one mainline break at the park.
Yeah, I remember when we started doing the metal fittings over the plastic, and I guess I would just say, to the extent that we could, every time something breaks, if we replace it with upgraded equipment rather than an all at once activity, it seems like at least that's marginal improvement.
Right.
But
Like I said,
I don't know how much time you and your crews are spending up there. I mean, I go up there to drop off my kids once in a while, and I always wave hi because you're always up there. And so,
Yeah. And
it's a lot of
Councilmember
time.
Juan, this budget does not cover Clayton Community Park. That's out of your general fund operating budget.
Yeah, I'm speaking more generally, just because,
But for the most part, when we have a mainline break throughout the city, you got to remember that most of it's over 25 years old, and it's only plastic. For 98% of it is PVC. The rest of it is brass valves, and even they wear out. So,
okay, no, I got it.
All right, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Tillman, next question.
I'm still just digging into this one. Laura, can you tell me, I'm sorry, Assistant City Manager Hoffmeister, can you please tell me a little bit more too about the repair or the redo behind Peacock Creek? What's happening there?
Yes, what we're proposing, and I just want to caveat this preliminary budget information has not been shared with the Trails and Landscape Committee. Our goal is to go to them next before it comes to the council for final adoption. But one of the things we've been hearing about is the trail behind Peacock Creek there that connects over to the Black Diamond Trail and runs behind the homes over toward the park. We've last repaired it, it looks like about 10-12 years ago. We put in new headers, put in DG, compacted it all down, added some sub drainage. Again, it's in an area that has soil movement and compaction. It's in bad shape and it needs to be redone. And given that we're not going to be able to do planting work, this is a great time to do things that don't require water. So we have some funds set aside to redo that trail segment there. That seems to be the worst one. And we have some contingency funds up in the trails up above for dealing with crack sealing or any other minor pavement work we need to do. Most of our paved trails are in good shape. We do have one pavement project from the second bridge on the Cardinate Trail, which is the one by the end of North Mitchell Canyon, going up to Oakhurst Boulevard across from Yolanda Circle. That pathway has not been resurfaced since the beginning of time, and it's in need of resurfacing. So we have money set aside. We had it set aside for this fiscal year. The project's been delayed because we have it tied to a change order that would be included with the street repaving work. That's what we've done in the past to get our best pricing. And so we've moved that project forward and increased the price a little bit, the cost a little bit based upon some of the information that the city engineer's given us with quantities that are coming out in bids today. Apparently asphalt and labor is much more expensive than it was 2 years ago.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And
So
then,
our focus is what we're going to recommend to the Trails and Landscaping Committee is to, focus on upgrading our irrigation control system so we have better management of water, work on trail areas and work on vegetation management, both for fuel load reduction as well as drainage way, courseway work and along the corridor streets, and spend our funds that way for at least this next year. We'll see where we are next year in terms of drought conditions.
okay. And then hopefully I'll get off this budget pretty soon, but one more question. The contract seasonal labor, can somebody tell me what that entails? The 160,000 on this same landscape maintenance district budget?
Yes, we use a contract out through a private company, currently workers.com, for seasonal laborers to come in and help us in the landscape district. We usually have between 5 and 7, sometimes maybe 8 in a regular season. With COVID, Jim Warburton has been very hindered with his crew. They've done a yeoman's job plus in the department because we have not had really the benefit of the seasonal laborers through the pandemic. We've had maybe a couple we've gotten here or there. I know we have 2 right now when we would normally have maybe 5 to 7.
Okay.
So they would help us out doing the trimming work, vegetation management. And right now, the priorities for our full-time staff is dealing with more major issues and trimming for safety purposes only. So it's been a hindrance, and I think I know there's areas in our community that look bad. There's weeds in them. People would like to see more trimming, but with running a department of 5 people to do all the maintenance citywide, they've been handling a boatload over the last year and a half and have taken on quite a bit to still make the community look as good as it can.
Of course.
But we normally have budgeted back in for having a full contingency with hope that when COVID limitations relax a bit, we're able to upstaff that. And we're having a challenge with workers.com because given the pandemic, they don't have a lot of workers on their payroll, on their docket to be able to assign to us.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have anything until we get to page 13 unless Jeff does. I'm going to go back to the beginning now.
Which one is page 13?
General Services Department.
Can we go back to, I don't have the page numbers, the general fund revenue 21-22 page? I'm just looking at the other thing. I don't know if you have it here. I think it may be in the agenda.
You're talking about the report itself, page 1 of the general fund revenues?
No, I'm looking at more at a detail level.
Yes, that would be what was in the actual.
I believe
staff
in the
report.
agenda, it's on page 6 of the PDF. Yes, page 6
Yeah.
of the PDF. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, are we all there? Because there's a lot of small numbers here.
Yes.
All right. So the sales and use tax projection. So that is, well, on my Excel, it's 4301, right? So we're projecting a 9% increase, 9.4% increase in sales tax here. Do we have background on what the drivers are for that? Like, why is that so high?
There you go.
So part of, I'm trying to get there. I think I just got there.
Yes,
Does that
yes.
tiny print look like what you're looking at?
Yeah, that's it.
Yes,
Perfect. Tiny print for everybody. Excellent. Slightly less tiny print. So the thing to understand about sales and use tax, that particular number is one, this is from the changes against the amended budget. So, you just have to understand what you're comparing. Secondly, as Paul described in his overview, Clayton has fared very well, surprisingly, on the sales tax front. And that's because of two reasons. One is the Wayfair decision. The other is the impact on the pandemic buying patterns and how that plays into both online shopping as well as what shows up in the share that the city gets of the countywide pool. And actually what I'm going to share instead, because I pulled this up earlier, is this lovely chart that we have that describes how just fabulously easy it is to figure out what happens with sales tax revenues. Okay, so this is how sales tax revenues flow. What happens in terms of where sales tax is allocated and what pieces come to the city. The two pieces, again, that have really made a difference, partly because of pandemic buying patterns, partly because of the Wayfair decision, is the fact that the amount going to the countywide pool has gone up and the amount that's coming from online sales has come up. And so when, and we rely heavily on HDL for our sales tax projections. When they look at all of the trends and the pandemic buying patterns, the effect of the Wayfair decision, et cetera, what they see is that it's not our local sales tax that's growing. It's not our, few businesses downtown, which were shut down, many of them during the pandemic, et cetera. It's these broader economic trends that are really resulting in us having actually a pretty good sales tax picture. And so that's what's behind those numbers, is these broader trends, both countywide and spending pattern wise.
I get that. We have a pretty stable base because people need to buy stuff, and Wayfair helps that out. So I guess more what I'm asking is, we picked a number 585,965. So what is that based on? Like, we had talked earlier, you and I, about the vendors that support the sales tax figures that the city collects. I mean, I think the drivers are, the largest are Safeway, CVS, Walgreens, and Oakhurst is probably on there somewhere. And then you have all these other sales that come on those left channels that you were showing. So do we have more info on how the 585,965 is built up?
So, HDL provides, does a whole bunch of analysis in the background and looks at all these trends. And then we rely literally on their numbers. So they've based it on the things that I'm telling you. I don't know that I can do justice to exactly what goes into their modeling of it, but they're looking at what industries have fared well. So all of the home improvement projects, they're looking at how people are spending and what categories they're spending in. So building and construction has really been up. Food and drug has pretty been up. Restaurants and hotels completely down. So how all of that spending plays into local, pool, and online is what generates that. So I'm not sure,
So we don't have, so we rely on what they provide.
We do, because they know a whole lot more about sales tax generation than we do from a economic driver perspective.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'd like to see like a stratification of vendors that support the figure.
So
we had talked about the exact dollars probably may not be available. I don't know if you were looking into that.
I
But
did.
I do think understanding who our top sales tax providers are would also be helpful information.
So let me say a couple of things about that. One, I did follow up on our conversation, and in fact, I can provide you a list in alphabetical order of the top 25, but I cannot, under our confidentiality agreement, provide the even the ranking. That is anything that the private entity tells the taxing agencies is considered proprietary confidential information. HDL gets that because we have this agreement with FTB around that, but we are not allowed to share that information. So I can tell you the top 25, but I can't go beyond that.
Okay.
The second thing is the local businesses are only one portion of what comes into us on sales tax. Remember, a lot of it comes from the county pool. And so I can't, Safeway isn't a county pool contributor to city revenues. It's a local contributor to city revenues. So there's also all the stuff that goes into the county pool that isn't the individual, like I can't give you a list of those businesses, right? That's not going to be a local list of businesses.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems odd that, when we looked at the ordinance last meeting, when we were talking about sales tax providers, when we looked at the examples, the Concord materials, they had listed in order their vendors.
So,
but
Laura,
we can't
cover
do that.
Cover your ears, Laura. Mute your mic. I followed up on that. That is not in compliance with the confidentiality agreement. So sorry, Laura, I think to HDL on you guys because it was published. And I asked the question like, hey, Concord did it. And I got back ooh, they were not supposed to do that. So I was like, okay, guess I won't do that. So sorry, I'm not going to do that. So that was why
Okay.
I couldn't do, and I was right that we are completely precluded from providing that. But the contra cost of, to give you one more slice of information, to give you an idea, things that go into the contra costa pool of which we get a share include, Target, Macy's, Costco, AT&T Mobility, Nordstrom, Verizon, Etsy, Home Depot, like none of that exists in our city, right? So
Yeah, you would want to group like by channel. So those things that come through the county pool, you would segregate, and then you'd isolate the others. But okay.
I just want to clarify, would it be helpful to you to see of the number that the 585, whatever the number is there, what percentage or what dollar amount of that comes through the county pool, and what dollar amount did HDL estimate coming from Wayfair, so you can see a proportionality of that amount and what is coming from the local city tax base versus the county pool versus the Wayfair decision?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just, to get more insight or context around that figure, it's a fairly large portion of our revenue. I mean, it represents 13%, if I recall from the table, but the pie chart, not the table, it's a misnomer.
We could probably look into that, see if there's some better clarification we can get as to what makes up that in terms of the categories. The Wayfair decision was one that was a little newer, that came out, as Paul was mentioning, that is only just recently been able to get some trend information from HDL, because literally 2 years ago it's like, we don't know what we're going to get, and something came in, and then it's kind of like, well, what's it going to be for the next year? And then what happens on the next year? It's kind of like, okay, in year 3 we're in a pandemic mode, and part of that is what sustainability does the pandemic change in shopping patterns to online have with that pool of funds ongoingly in the future? What traction does that have over time? And that's what HDL tries to model.
Okay. No, if there were something available, I think that'd be helpful. Okay, so that was, I think that was it on 22. There's some other little onesie twosies here, but they're relatively small, so I don't think it's a big deal. There's some large percent changes, but not big dollars. So, okay. And then let's see here.
We lost Raina, by the way. I don't know if anybody else.
I saw that. Well, she probably knows how to join.
Yeah, for sure.
No, her video was cutting in and out, so I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
I think she's trying to reconnect, but go ahead and go on. That's fine.
Okay. Let's see. So, Holly, you said you had it for general services GF05. Can we go to GF02?
Department 02? I'm trying to understand.
Oh, I don't know. It's labeled as GF02. So yeah, Department 02. So admin, finance, legal.
Okay.
So for 7411 here, which is legal services retainer,
Yep.
that increased by like 30%. Is there something that we're expecting here? That's weird.
So if you recall, I mentioned that we will have an escalator based on the CPI, of course, but I reallocated between departments based upon actual costs. So in other words, just I'm throwing a number out there. It's not real. If we had $100,000 of total legal, it's split between several different departments. And this year, looking at where the dollars were actually spent, I reallocated that. There's a.
So is this just a left-hand, right-hand thing? It's not a net increase?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
that's fine. And then benefits. I assume that this carries across all the departments, but benefits rise was 17%. Like, is that what? I'm assuming this is like the health and
so
welfare
we have
benefits.
right now. We've got a 6%, a 6% budgeted increase for healthcare, but our unfunded liability went up $100,000 this year and that's a benefit.
Yeah, but that's in
But you're just looking at the benefit
21. But if you just look at 7246.
Yeah, I mean,
that's straight up 17%.
That's right, and that could be a function of a new employer having a family on the books for their health care rather than a single person or just a single person or a person with just a spouse.
Families are expensive, man.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, and then I guess I also had a question about GF04 on the retainer, but I guess that's probably the same answer under 7411. It just seemed like, I guess that just got reshuffled across.
Yeah. Yes.
Because that spiked and dipped in various places.
Yeah. You have the spreadsheet that the Excel that's got, there's a worksheet within the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
That shows what I did, so you can take a look at that.
Okay. Yeah, I see that. Okay. That was it for 04 and 2. So I guess we're on to 05. Holly, if you had yours ready to go.
Yeah, just really quickly. So for me, line 7415, the computer IT services, I didn't understand why it was under, I'm not saying it didn't belong under 2019, 2020, but I didn't understand why the jump wouldn't have been, and even 2419 under this year. For example, when I look at the bottom part, 7415 reads that there was IT support of 23,875, and that the balance of that is the 31,593, and it's including Zoom meetings, et cetera. What was that not supposed to be for what's going on?
What happened last year, because we were struggling to balance our general fund, and actually Laura was the acting city manager at the time, but we reallocated. Laura determined that we could use PEG money, grant monies, to pay for our IT services for last year, for the current year and next. So if you go over to Fund 230, you'll see kind of the opposite of that, where we didn't have any IT costs in the grants fund in 1920, but all of a sudden in 2021 and 21-22, we've got a bunch of grant funded IT services.
Okay.
So those services haven't gone away. We still have them, but we're just paying from a different source.
Okay.
I'm not using the general fund to pay them, since there's not the funds really in the general fund to support that. So we found an alternative funding source.
Okay. Okay. Jeff, go ahead.
Oh, there's a couple things at the bottom here, like searchable muni code projected expense of like 33,000. Where is
Those
that?
were funds that were, those were,
Actually, sorry, that was ECS imaging. My bad. I picked the wrong line item. So that's 7419. Like, did that actually happen? It says projected.
what, are we in 05?
Yeah, still in 05 in 7419 fund.
We've spent some, yeah, we have spent, we're projecting 30,000 to be spent. Let me, we've spent some, I don't know how, off the top of my
Okay,
head. how much
so
we've
that is
spent.
in process right now. It's not a
Yeah,
placeholder.
that was a project that Janet was working on. So she's here, she could speak to that.
Okay, and then there's a recruitment fee here. I know that we've had some turnover with staff and whatnot. So does recruitment costs typically get charged to the department that does the hiring? Or is that absorbed here within general services?
That, I mean, this has a recruitment, the 30,000 has a recruitment for a community development director and a finance director. This is the department that's typically, general services typically bears the cost of recruitments. However, it could also be borne by the department. I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Yeah, it's just it's a geography thing. So I didn't know if that was the practice.
Yeah, either one works. I mean, it's all about being consistent. Okay,
and then I guess the last couple items here. In 7351, there's 20% increase in liability insurance. And there's a new, what looks like a new line item for cyber liability. It's not that much, but like, is cyber liability new? Or is it just broken out this year? And then what's up with the 20% increase in liability?
I can speak to that, and I apologize that I'm on my phone. I'm sitting in my office and I got picked off, so I apologize for I don't know what it looks like, but anyway, I'm here. And so we get all of our insurance through Municipal Pooling Authority that we belong to. Cyber insurance has existed for the last several years, but it's just being broken out now. It's becoming more significant. In terms of the overall increase, our insurance broker Alliant is really struggling because the insurance market has been battered between, wildfires and, COVID and, you name it, cyber ransom attacks, et cetera. All of the insurance markets are just going absolutely nuts, and the prices are going up astronomically. This is particularly true for our what we call excess insurances. So we're self-insured for a tiny amount, MPA is insured for a certain amount, and then above that we buy excess insurance for certain things. The excess insurance market in particular is being really hammered. A lot of insurance providers are coming out of that market. They don't want to participate, so the costs are going up dramatically. We hope that the ultimate costs will be a little bit less than that, but honestly, everything we're seeing is quite concerning on the front of what's happening in those markets. So we definitely have been watching that from an MPA board perspective, and are concerned as that continues to grow.
Okay, yeah, I understand the excess markets. I would expect you to be very disappointed that those will not get cheaper anytime soon. So
no,
those are only going to go up, and everything is more expensive. Okay.
Yeah.
That was all my stuff on general services. I don't know if you had more, Holly.
Oh, no more on that one.
Recording in progress.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Okay. Poor Raina.
Wow, there were two of you.
She teleported.
In 06, I just have a quick question. For line item 7343, the vehicle maintenance. It's nothing major. It's a $5,000 bump, and it looks like it actually has fluctuated in the last couple of years. But we just bought a couple new cars, so I was curious why we padded it a little bit more for vehicle maintenance there.
The increase in
we-
vehicles,
I think she's letting you go, Jason.
for the vehicles that we've increased, and it's part of our contract with where we get them serviced, but it's just the vehicles that we added.
Okay, great, thank you. And then you already answered my question about the animal pest control. And then the dispatch services looks like it's just the contract you have, I guess, with Concord for dispatching.
Yes.
Why is the dispatch services projected to be a fairly large variance this year? Do we have did something occur that would cause that? I would think that that'd be pretty stable.
We get a bill from the county. It's the county, Jason?
No, it's the city of Concord that we have the
City of
contract with. Which line is that?
7424. I'd imagine just the dispatch services. I don't know how it bills out. Is it like a flat fee for time? Or?
We get a bill saying how much they're going to charge us.
Yeah, I'd have to take a look at the contract to see it again.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge deal, but it is something that I would expect to be kind of flattish once we contract for the services, unless it's variably priced somehow.
I think I can just answer it at a high level. I think there's a percentage component in there of certain costs, which includes certain equipment replacement in their dispatch center and based upon our usage. So it does change if they do computer or equipment upgrades, then the bill would be a little higher, but Jason can dig into that and get you some more details after.
It's okay. I'm good with that. Okay, cool.
I didn't have any others on that one.
Yeah, I just had some other general questions that weren't really specific to any given fund. So I don't know if you wanted to target any other specifics, Holly, or?
So I'm back. Can I just say that I don't think we're paying enough for internet because I keep getting kicked out. So I'm done now. Thank you.
Okay. I only had one more that I just wanted to dig into, and that is on the engineering department. It's my page 22 printed out. And I just said professional engineering services. Okay, so it looks like it's 7410. And it went down, which is not a bad thing. And I'm assuming that's gone down because of the proposal possibly to have a full-time employee come on board. Okay,
yeah. Can we talk about that for a little bit? Wait, what fund is that? I forget now.
It's 7410.
Well, GF. Which one is it? Department
8.
Wait. Okay. Yeah. So given our structural deficit, which I think is fair to say at this point, well, not deficit. Sorry. It's not yet a deficit, but it will be. Yeah. This brings on fixed costs in a time where we don't have a plan to recoup it. So do we have an apples to apples comparison? Because it's not just the wage. I mean, I think here is like a partial year plus a partial year of all the bennies associated with the 7.2 series funds, right? Because you got PERS is their killer, but you have PERS and insurance on top of the wage, and those costs will never go down. They will only go up. And so is there an apples to apples comparison of the all-in cost on a full year basis for a contract position versus this proposal to hire?
So not in the documents that you have. That's the first part of the answer. The second piece is to say that the way that we pay for engineering services right now is multifaceted. We have a retainer, which is what's typically in this budget. We have work that the city engineer does on different CIP projects that may be charged to a different fund. We have work in general that may be charged to other funds or private projects. And what we haven't done is necessarily try to slice it that fine yet. But I think that while it may be a little bit more to have a city engineer on board, we can't just look within this particular department, because there are other places where some of that salary will be recouped by being charged to other projects. So we can try to put together a complete assignment of salary across projects and other funds and this department. But when I look, the stepping back to more of a 30,000 foot level, what we spent via Harris Engineering across all of those types of functions in the last couple of years is $250,000 to $300,000 a year. The salary and loaded benefits cost will not reach that level. At the same time, so it's like, oh, so it'll be cheaper. Well, no. At the same time, there is work that not all types of work can be done by the same person unless we find someone who's wearing your t-shirt and becomes Superman and has all of those skills. But somewhere in between, we know that they can do more than just what's in the retainer. And all you're seeing here are costs in the retainer versus a total salary cost. It's not going to be, well, it's going to be so much cheaper than having a contract engineer, because we'll still need some support from contract engineering for things that are, that person may not have the expertise in a particular area. So my general assessment in looking at the total costs and projects and the labor costs, et cetera, versus the retainer is that it will probably be fairly close. In addition to that, there are a variety of things where we have struggled internally to provide adequate service or adequate support for, say, some of our maintenance functions, right? So having someone on board who we can say, hey, we really need you to dig in and work with Jim on some of this engineering stuff. We can do that with a contract engineer, but it's not always as straightforward in doing so. And so I think that there is more that we can do from a strategic standpoint. There's more that we can do from a customer service standpoint by having someone in-house. If there's a desire, frankly, to put this off until the longer term discussion, I think that's, certainly possible. But, and Bill, our current city engineer is on the call. So Bill, don't take this personally. It has nothing to do with you. But we're really finding that it's a struggle to try and coordinate across that consulting relationship to do all the things that we want and need a city engineer to do, and to bring that together with our maintenance function and an overall public works function. So, that was the rationale behind the recommendation, even though it comes at a time when we're close. But you can't just compare the fully loaded salary and the engineering retainer costs, because there's other pieces that show up in other places.
Yeah, I get that the costs kind of get spread out and there's chargebacks and whatnot. So that's why I think in apples to apples, whatever is a fair comparison that actually takes into account that the complexity there, I think would be useful. Because I would say without that, and given our structural deficits, I would be pretty significantly concerned with incurring essentially costs that we can never shed. I mean, PERS is great, and I know most of the people on the call are members of PERS, so good job for you guys. But PERS is the worst. Like, I I don't think that incurring additional PERS costs is good without knowing what the full ramifications are. And so I would be very hesitant to bring on additional, PERSable costs without doing that and without getting the full picture that you had introduced in the beginning. I mean, I think that discussion is almost more important. And so, I mean, that's just my take on it. I don't know, like it's a long-term commitment with a dearth of information. So that I don't know, Holly, if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, when are we going to have the conversation, the deeper conversation? Because I know when we had the deep dive with each of the department heads, just kind of as my refresher coming in, I think it was in January, and it looked like it was an evergreen contract that we had with Harris and Associates where it renewed every August. And I know we just did this interim one, but is that going to come up again in August, or do we have a little bit more time now because we have this new contract with Bill?
Well, we can end it any time. I mean, it's not like we lock it in
Correct.
for any amount of time.
Correct. Correct.
My question is whether or not it was going to come up again in August to renew.
No.
I get that we can cancel anytime. Okay, perfect. So are we going to have a conversation
We-
about that soon? As a council?
Well, about the bigger financial picture, or specifically the Harris contract?
No, about this what's in this proposed budget, I guess. And looking at, because my question was, why was it only 60,000 as opposed to the 122 that we had in there before? And it's because we're going to have a conversation about possibly ending that. And so is that going to happen next week at the council meeting as a full council, or when will we have the discussion?
Well, that was the proposal. Was, you can see that it's a shift from 100% professional services to half salary, half professional services. That's a question of, the mechanics of the contract is not really a subject for the council that necessarily needs to get engaged in, and we would handle that on the contract end. But okay. The decision to add an FTE, approve a salary schedule, approve a class spec, et cetera, that is all within the council's purview, and is in conceptual terms in front of you today, and will be is planned to be in front of you in more detail in the budget presentation on the 15th. I will say that I'm not sure that I feel confident that I can get all of the detail information that Councilmember Juan is rightly asking for in the next 2 days in order to finish it, get it done, put together a packet, and not make Janet want to chuck her boss out the window. So, and I think there's some merit to potentially having that long-term conversation about the city's financial future at the same time, then, or have that and then make a decision about the long-term focus on the city engineer. I will say, however, I feel very strongly that it's something that we will benefit from. I feel like it's the right thing to do. I feel like it will provide benefits far beyond what looks like the immediate swap of simply a staff person for a contract person, because of the ability to move them into the organization and bring on some of those more strategic functions. But I don't know that I can provide enough information to make the best case for that, frankly, by the 15th. And perhaps it's better suited to come to mid-year.
Dude, we're losing.
I'm getting like every fourth word.
Can't hear you, Raina. Shoot.
With following on.
We lost you for quite a while. You keep freezing.
And the broad.
Laura's gonna go get her.
Potential. I'm gonna have to go into. Can you hear me now?
Kinda.
Yeah, a little. And negative.
Okay, Laura, you need to get started. Hi,
Hello.
how's everybody?
We couldn't hear you for like the last 90 seconds.
Oh yeah, bloody heck.
I think I would like summarize what you were saying by it's good to have, but you likely will not have it within the next 2 days to get on the agenda for our conversation on
That's
Tuesday.
correct. And so your point as well about having potentially the broader financial conversation and looking at those issues, and then coming back with a further conversation after that is probably the right thing.
Yeah, because I feel like it may be a little bit cart before the horse, just because.
Oh, I just wanted to. That's okay.
Okay. I see Laura in the back of Paul now. This is like me. It's like the Brady Bunch going on.
The only other thing that I will just add to this is, or just ask, is the amount that we're an offer is for lack of a better word, competitive? We've already talked about this at the very beginning, right? So I know it's not. So
no, we're not competitive in any of our salaries.
Exactly. So it just, I don't know. I don't know that you entice anyone with that, is my point. I don't know that it'd be great.
You're gonna hold a party and no one's gonna show up.
It'd be great if we could get somebody at that level, but I don't know. We can have a broader conversation offline if we need to, but I just don't know how you attract anybody with that line item.
I am familiar with the notion of throwing a party and nobody coming, unfortunately. So on that note, and it is in your packet that every single person you're looking at on city staff is grossly underpaid relative to market, and that is a significant issue for us. It only exacerbates the already challenging financial situation that our general fund has, and all of that needs to be brought together at the same time. So that is a big challenge ahead of us, and I think it's going to be some significant conversation. So while as I said, I do feel strongly regarding a city engineer as part of our staff, I think that timing wise, it may be better to flip the order and look at that more as part of the broader conversation that we're going to have kind of summer into fall, when we don't have a budget adoption deadline breathing down our necks, because we do need to get a budget adopted for July 1st. So that's really the focus now, and if I think that's good feedback from the committee, and we'll huddle up after on the staff side and really look at what do we propose in the budget and what do we propose to bring back later.
Okay. That'd be great. Yeah, sorry to throw that little wrinkle, but I just think it makes more sense to have that full conversation, because we've got some decisions to make and changes to make. This has to be improved for the long haul. We can't keep limping along.
So I have some other kind of more questions along those lines, if we're talking about other modifications before we bring back. So one of the items that we talked about, or that I introduced a little while ago, was taking on the maintenance of the dog park. Was that included here somewhere? I don't know if that was called out, or is that like a discussion item for later?
That is not called out. We certainly can find sufficient funding for the one-time costs. That's sort of a separate issue, which you didn't just ask about, but is part of this. And there's certainly funding available for the one-time costs. The annual costs are $6,000-7,000 a year, probably increasing going forward, to do the additional maintenance of the dog park. As you can see, we have a $2,600 surplus. I suppose we'll have a little bit more wiggle room with respect to the swap of if we come back with a recommendation to remain with a contract city engineer. So if there could be if there's funding for it, then look at whether that could be funneled toward the dog park maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when we talk about it at the following meeting, that was something that I think we would have fairly widespread support over, and with the low cost, it was something that I was hoping to see included. And then let's see. So we had talked several times about the interactive traffic signals near the middle school. I think that's CIP 10448. Am I correct? I'm not sure.
I believe so. Laura has a budget right in front of her computer, which is great. So I can look at that. I believe that's correct. That has some funding in it. We are looking to determine two things. One, get the final cost for the work that's already been done, see how much is left in the project and how much more might be needed to do that interactive stop ahead. We are struggling with getting, Bill and I just talked about this yesterday, struggling to get sufficient information from the county as to what they will charge to help us put that in and blah, 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 blah. So we're still pushing forward on that, and that should come back if it needs additional funding with a recommendation as soon as we can get information back from the county, but it's included as part of the proposed CIP.
Okay, great. And then so let's see. I imagine the majority of our water costs in general is probably for landscape rather than that little tiny fountain that's in the grove. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes.
Okay. That's fine then. Then let's see. So there was a note somewhere in the document, I don't remember where it was, talked about the difference between a general tax and a special revenue measure and the different hurdles that they need to clear for approval. One's 50%, the other's 2/3. Can you describe how you delineate the two? Or how the two are delineated, sorry.
A general tax has to be available to be used for any governmental purpose, right? So you can't say, I really want to fund police and I'm going to put in place a general tax so I only have to have 50%. If you're going to say it's only going to go to police, that is a special tax. Now, there are two very distinct ends to that. And there's a pretty large, mushy gray middle, which is to say, you can say we're going to ask for a general tax increase. And it is, could be used for things like public safety, and parks and some other stuff. How you describe it can be a little bit gray, but basically it cannot be a restricted use. You cannot say to the voters, we're only going to pay for PD costs. Please support us and ask for a 50% vote. You have to ask for a 2/3 at that point. If you're going to get 50%, you're going to say it's going to be used for any governmental purpose, such as blah, 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 blah.
But then if you do that, any governmental purpose, using your example, you have discretion to essentially use it for only that purpose if it is so chosen. Correct?
You have 100% discretion to allocate those funds however you choose. The challenge is that sometimes people only want to vote for, say, a public safety tax, right? And if the government says, okay, we're going to go for a 50% vote, it's going to be used for any governmental purpose, including, 50% of our budget is public safety, so maybe it's likely to go to public safety. But if people don't trust that their government is going to do what they think they want with those funds, they may not support a general tax. So the benefit of a specific tax is you get people who specifically want that, but you've got to get more of them.
Okay, great. And what would a sales tax be considered? It could be both?
Depends, yeah.
Okay, cool, got it. That makes sense. So then the other thing was, it looks like we were putting the crossing guard in funding out of the rainy day fund again for this year.
Yeah.
I don't know the number. Sorry.
$14,000 rainy day fund is Fund 110. It was done as a rainy day fund expense in the current fiscal year, which of course we haven't spent hardly any of because we weren't in school for most of the year. And that was one of those, honestly, we were putting the budget together, and I had not remembered that we needed to put funding in the operating budget. At that point, it looked like we had $2,600. So the recommendation is to put it in the rainy day fund, and it needs to be accommodated in the long run in the operating budget. We may have some wiggle room now to rearrange, but
Okay.
the goal is to put it in the operating budget.
Yeah, I think on the second pass, I think it would be better seeing it in the operating fund, because I mean, it is operational, and like our conversation earlier, funding operational costs out of one-time money seems poor in general.
100%, but I didn't have a way to do that at that point. So
okay, no problem. But yeah, so like I think we may have a little bit more room now. And then, you know, there's also, when we look at, here's what I'd like to throw on the table. When we look at GF01, the legislative budget, there's room here. You know, we pay some amount in things that are almost discretionary, like our dues, which we don't necessarily need to be members of these organizations if we don't want to. We essentially accrue the benefits without paying, so we could act as a free rider if we wanted to. But then also, you know, city council and you know, our commission compensation, I consider that pretty flexible. And so to the extent that we need funds to pay for some of these other incidental, like smaller items, I would suggest that that's a bucket that we can tap.
Your council compensation, Councilmember Juan, is established by ordinance. The council can voluntarily give up their pay, but we can't budget that way.
Oh yeah, no, we would have to just pass an ordinance to change it.
Yes, you would have to go through a different process.
So, you know, that only takes 2 meetings. Easy peasy. So anyways, I'm saying, like, I find some of these things that are like for public safety, like the crossing guard and the signal stuff and other things that are essentially for the safety of the public, to be pretty important, more important than a stipend. So you could just keep that in the desk if you want.
thank you.
That was it.
Any other questions, Councilmember Tillman, or if there are members of the public, you may wish to see if there's any comments from our attendees?
No, I didn't have any other further questions. Thank you guys for answering all the ones that I did have earlier.
Okay.
Do we want to ask the public if they have any questions or comments they want to make? I don't see any hands raised.
They can hear us, so it's not like we're whispering behind their backs. So I'm thinking if they had something, they would raise their hand. So I think we can, somebody very nicely renamed me. How delightful. I don't know who that was, but thank you very much. I feel much less schizophrenic at the moment. If there are no other questions and no comments from the public, I believe that what we would like is concurrence from the committee to move this forward to the city council for a budget hearing on June 15th.
And this is with the changes that we talked about?
So far, the recommended changes that I have heard specifically from the committee that I would plan to incorporate would be to put off the transition to a city engineer, in-house city engineer, until such time as we have the longer term financial conversation, to add back in the dog park, and if possible to add back in the crossing guard as an operational expense and not a rainy day fund expense.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Okay, could we do a little formal, have a motion, have a second? Janet can ask both of you again whether you'd like to support it, and we'll move forward.
With those amended changes, I would move that we advance it to the council for discussion at our next meeting.
And I'll second. And do we really have to vote?
I vote yes.
I vote yes too. We can't hear you, Janet.
Janet's totally on mute. Well, she's not on mute because she doesn't have the mute indicator, but her microphone's not working.
Oh, wait, here.
There you go.
Better. Okay. So Councilmember Tillman and Councilmember Juan, I both have you requesting to move this item forward with the indicated changes to the meeting of June 15th for the entire city council.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I
Okay,
guess with that, are we adjourned?
I don't have an agenda in front of me, so I
Okay.
can't tell you if we're done with the agenda.
Yeah, actually, the next item on the agenda is adjournment, and I have a time of 4:59 for that adjournment.
You all get your minute
Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks to my staff and Bill for being here. And thank you for understanding as I got kicked off 4 times because that's a lot of fun in the middle of a budget hearing.
Nope. Thank you all for everything you do. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.